got a little controversy to discuss, as well as Nintendo making some big changes at a company level, including things that will affect YouTubers and how they allow their games to be covered, which is always a fun time. So good morning, Mario, and good morning, Switch fans. Hope you're all doing fantastic out there today. Enjoyed your weekend, and hopefully you're enjoying your long weekend if you're here celebrating Labor Day. Let's kick it off with a little controversy that I saw pop up because of a video I posted last night. Now, if you haven't seen the video, you should go watch it. Before I even tell you the controversy, see if you can figure out the controversy. Like, pause this video, go see if you can figure out the controversy, and come back, and then I'll say what it is. You probably figured it out. It's the fact that every single game in my top 7 games of September was Echoes of Wisdom. But it doesn't mean that I'm not excited for those other games. It was just a little joke that I'm so excited for Echoes of Wisdom. I thought it was pretty clear because I still showed gameplay and talked explicitly about the games that I was showing, so I still am excited for Epic Mickey and the new Ace Attorney Investigations and Beyond Galaxy Land and of course the Plucky Squire. But then I kind of molded that verbiage into something about Echoes of Wisdom to make kind of like a funny haha, I'm so excited for Echoes of Wisdom. I think the game's going to be one of the best ever on Switch. So all top 7 were Echoes of Wisdom. It wasn't to say that there's nothing good coming on Switch. In fact, I'm going to play all those games that I mentioned. Plucky Squire is something I've been looking forward to forever. I thought it was pretty obvious that it was just a joke, but let me joke a little bit. Let me have some fun. Life ain't too serious. Get it? Like, every game was Echoes of Wisdom, but not really. But that's the joke, because I'm really excited for Echoes of Wisdom. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. Let's talk about this YouTube thing. Nintendo has been up and down all over the place with how they allow content creators to cover their games. When I started YouTube in 2010, long time ago, old man over here, Nintendo was pretty strict. They did not want you to cover their games without permission. And then over time they kind of loosened up, and then eventually they had this music library that if your games were caught, if your videos were caught using music from those games, they could get flagged and then demonetized, meaning Nintendo gets the earnings, not you. But at that time there was a bunch of YouTube networks like Machinima and Maker Studios, and I don't even remember, so many of them, and they had the ability to protect you, to whitelist you from the music library passes. And then Nintendo got pretty lenient, and they were like, whatever, make videos, just don't talk about piracy, don't talk about modding, don't talk about things like that. And I worked with Nintendo for years. I got to go to a bunch of cool events. I got to go to the Smash Brothers launch event, preview event. I got to go to the Switch preview event. I got to get Mario Odyssey early. I got a lot of great opportunities and a bunch of beautiful memories and moments. And Nintendo seemed pretty darn cool. I had an issue with Nintendo. They banned me for a little bit. Then they said, okay, you can come back. And things were hunky-dory. I was touring their booth at E3. It seemed like, okay, they're a little bit strict. They're a little odd sometimes, but they like me and they like YouTube and they're being more modern. Then they stopped working with me, but they still let people make videos on their games. Nintendo won't work with me anymore because they hate that I got a Switch OLED early, even though they should really hate the store that sold it, not me. Anyhow, enough about that. They've now implemented these new guidelines that they say are going to be effective for new YouTube videos and online video and image sharing, including things like TikTok, Instagram Reels, etc. Basically, they don't want you to break any rules in multiplayer, and they don't want you to do anything unlawful, infringing, or inappropriate. And they say that that includes things that could impair the gameplay experience in multiplayer mode, such as intentionally disrupting game progress. Now that is an interesting one. So I understand that they don't want you to hack the game, but what does it mean to impair the gameplay experience in multiplayer mode, such as intentionally disrupting game progress? Now, they go on to say that graphic, explicit, harmful, offensive content, including statements or actions that may be considered offensive, insulting, obscene, or otherwise disturbing to others, now officially falls under unlawful, infringing, or inappropriate behavior. So I totally get that. Nintendo has never wanted you to be racist or use slurs or things like that, and that makes plenty of sense, and I think they have every right to enforce that. But now they say that you can violate the policy by messing with multiplayer game experience. Now, I don't think I've ever done anything like that, and I don't think any of my content does that, but I do think it's a bit unclear, And I am interested what exactly they mean. Now, Nintendo says that they will go as far as to take legal action against you if you post anything like this. They also say that they warn against posts that violate public order and morals. Which is like, this is very broad. What does that mean? Violates morals. What violates morals? There's so many things that violate so many different people's morals. Now, this seems like Nintendo is really strapping down and saying, okay, we are going to get more hardcore about our YouTube policy and about how we let people cover our games. And I don't know, what the impetus for this was. I don't know if they've been working on this for a while. I'm not exactly sure. But what I will say is that I don't think people need to cause a huge uproar about this. I don't think this is going to be something that is dramatically impactful. I could be wrong. And if it starts being super crazy, then okay, we'll have to have another discussion. But some people are probably going to make videos saying oh my God, Nintendo, they're so ridiculous. I can't believe they're turning into old Nintendo. I don't think this is so much that. I think this is just giving them more of a case in case they do want to take legal action. Let's say you've hacked Mario Kart and you're recording yourself showing how to use the hack and you're messing with the multiplayer lobbies and you're winning every time. And now you're showing people how to replicate this hack. Or let's say that you're, again, anything with slurs or things like that, I think they have a right to demonetize your content. But if it's something, the multiplayer, that's kind of where I take the most objection. And then I guess the morals thing, what does that mean? But I think this just is probably Nintendo, based on my understanding of covering them for the last 14 years, trying to be a proactive person in case something comes up, in case something happens on TikTok or on Instagram or on YouTube that they want to go after. And remember, Nintendo has been more aggressive at protecting their IP and protecting their games by locking down a lot of places that were doing emulation, different emulators on Switch, and kind of having a no-nonsense stance on that. Even if it seems a little unfair, even if it was going against sort of the free use, they've been very strict upon that. Now, it seems to me like this is kind of them just bringing that mentality over to the YouTube video online space. I don't think it should become some crazy issue. I can't foresee a world where my Nintendo videos get flagged, or most people's Nintendo videos get flagged. You'd have to be doing something very egregious, you're incredibly, incredibly insensitive and incredibly, incredibly immoral, or you're hacking the game, showing people how to pirate, things of that sort. I don't think this will become a problem outside of that. I guess TBD, but right now, interesting that they are putting this here, and interesting that it's so broad. I guess that's the dangerous part, is when it's very broad and non-specific, it feels like it gives the company such a 1-up, or a 10-up, because they have oh, that was not moral. That was disrupting the multiplayer experience. What does that even mean? And if they're not going to be super explicit about that, it can become gray. I just hope Nintendo doesn't do that, especially at the transition to a new console. Gosh almighty, we do not need Nintendo to become anti-video right when they're about to promote a new system. And look, unfortunately, there is a few % chance that maybe Nintendo thinks that's an important part of their transition. No, you will not show these games. We need people to buy them. But I hope that they do realize, and I hope they have voices of reason. And I do believe with 97% certainty that they will fully allow this to continue, as they realize the YouTube space is very kind to Nintendo, has a lot of love for Nintendo, and helps really spread and exponentially grow the Switch and Nintendo audience. And things like Animal Crossing New Horizons were huge because of YouTube. So I would not worry, but we'll keep our eyes on this, as it's interesting they're making this change now, right before we expect them to make a console transition. Now, speaking of changes, Nintendo made 2 other changes we got to cover. One being, the developer ND Cube. They're the people that make Mario Party. They've made quite a bit, actually. They made Clubhouse games. They made AC Pocket Camp. They made Mario Party Jamboree. And they now are changing their name from ND Cube to Nintendo Cube. Boom! So in case you didn't know what the ND stood for, now they've let you know. So from ND Cube to Nintendo Cube, I think Nintendo Cube is a very funny name, because the Nintendo Cube is basically the GameCube, right? That's the Nintendo Cube, and now that's this company name. And it's in case investors didn't know what ND Cube was, now we know. You are Nintendo Cube. The other part of this is that Nintendo bought out a bunch of their stock in 2010, and now they own 99% of the shares. So maybe this is a long time coming, and maybe this is just something, to sort of organize the company underneath the greater umbrella that is Nintendo. But I thought that was interesting. And also, it's interesting that Nintendo has a new president over at Nintendo of Europe. All right, so this guy who's been running the show for quite a while has stepped down, which I think is kind of interesting. Usually that doesn't happen, and to me it's very interesting because we are right before a transition, right? Like we're about to hit a new console cycle, and so I find it to be interesting that we've got somebody, stepping down and sort of changing of the guard in the midst of what is ostensibly a generational shift. So we know Furukawa took over and has made quite a lot of, I'd say, progressive changes for Nintendo. But now we have Stefan Boll, or Stefan Boll. Stefan? Mr. Boll has worked at Nintendo for 35 years. He's now deciding to step down and let Luciano Pereira take over as CEO and president of Nintendo of Europe. He's worked there himself for 30 years, and he was their CFO, and now he's stepping into the head honcho role, the same role that a guy like Reggie Fils-Aimé had at Nintendo of America. I don't even know who the Nintendo of America president... Oh, Doug Bowser! Mr. Doug Bowser is currently Nintendo president. How could I forget him? I feel like he's been behind the scenes for a while. We'll probably see more of him soon as the Switch 2 gets announced and things of that sort. But interesting that Nintendo of Europe is making a change and maybe looking to make a bigger push in that region of the world for their Switch 2 launch and get some new energy, new blood in there and see what they can do. But most importantly, let me know what you think about this whole YouTube shift that Nintendo's making, their new content creator guidelines, and do you agree with me that they'll have no effect, or do you think I'm being naive and you instead fear the worst? Let me know in the comments down below. Everybody, hit that like button if you enjoy these videos. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, SwitchForce out.